This is the demon, Dale Torborg. Give me back my pro wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
For those who don't know, now you know, baby. This is Hot Rod Biggs, Jared, Jimmy Street. We're going to take them to the limit one more time, baby, right here on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. It is me, your host, Jimmy Street, and I'm so happy to be here with you all today. Hope you all are having an awesome day out there in listener land. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this awesome episode today. Cannot lie, got a great guest. Today, we have the one and only Demon Dale Torborg. That's right. Dale, man, what a cool one we've got. I mean, this is really cool for us, especially me. You guys know Dale had a lot of really cool roles in his life and career, and not to be coincidental one bit, but the three of us that make up Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling are huge fans of those topics. First off, baseball, we love it. Wrestling, of course, we're Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, so that's a no-brainer. And then, of course, as you all know with me especially, rock and roll, and Dale covers all those topics. For you wrestling or nothing friends or listeners, we totally understand that, and normally we're right there with you, but however, I'm looking ahead at what Q has cooked up for us with these questions, and we're going to start out with some baseball questions, but have no fear. You know, we're not changing formats on you or anything like that. Like I said before, we all just love some baseball too. And with Dale's history with his dad and everything, we would be a fool to not ask some baseball questions. Bear with us though. We'll get to the wrestling soon enough. Hope y'all like Kiss too, because of course we got to ask some questions about them as well. But anyway, I think that's what's going to make up the show today. Y'all stick around for that to find out if I'm right about that. Of course, Dale is here like our past few guests because of Captain's Corner and GrappleCon 4, Back to Lutz, Gimmick Mania, April 11th, Residence Inn, Tampa Suncoast Parkway in Lutz, Florida. You know, you can't miss that. It's got Jeff Van Camp, Lord Humongous, Tommy Lane, Chick Donovan, all kinds of great people. And then, of course, our guest today, the Demon, Dale Torborg. You know, be there, be square, tell Captain's Corner that Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling sent you. Of course, guys, talking about GrappleCon 4, last episode we had Alex the Pug Porto. Really enjoyed doing that interview, really enjoyed that conversation. Alex has got a cool story like most of these guys we talked to, and y'all check that out if you haven't. Once again, we definitely appreciate you, Alex, for dropping by. One more time, guys, you know, I covered it last week. Rick Reynolds and the Gideon's Warrior Ministry. Email Rick Reynolds at icw2009@hotmail.com. If you're a church leader, pastor, youth pastor, whatever, get in touch with Rick. They tell some great stories about their wrestling days and their testimony. So if you'd like to book them for your church today, give Rick a holler at icw2009@hotmail.com. They're good guys. Can't wait to see what comes of that. Really, really positive things happening for them. All right, guys, that's all I got for the open. Quinton joins me on the other side when we're talking to the Kiss Demon, Dale Torborg. We'll be right back after these messages on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Hey, my name is Tammy Reynolds. I am the wife of Forsaken Rick Reynolds, that super cool guy that everybody knows and loves. And I represent West Side Sauces. I make sauces, I bottle them, I seal them, I sell them. I have a hot honey sauce, I have a sweet sauce, I have a hot sauce, I have a white sauce that's so yummy you can use it on everything. They are absolutely amazing and I'm so proud of them. We make them from scratch. So go on our website, westsidesauces.com. Check out our products, read about our story, and go online and order you some of these yummy sauces. And Rick actually uses all of the sauces because he is a die-hard smoker and griller, and so he likes really good sauces and rubs, and I make them, so how convenient is that for him? Go on our website, westsidesauces.com, order you some samples, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy them. Thank you guys. Be blessed.
All right, we are back with another awesome guest on the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. Today, it is the trifecta of fandom for Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. This gentleman covers rock and roll. This gentleman covers baseball. And most importantly, he covers Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. He is the one and only Demon Dale Torborg. Sir, it is great to have you here today. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure being with you guys.
Absolutely great to have you here. Of course, like I said, in the open, you're here for Captain's Corner in the GrappleCon 4. You're going to be back to Lutz at Gimmick Mania, and that's April 11th. Residence Inn, Tampa Suncoast Parkway, 2101 North Point Parkway, Lutz, Florida. Anyway, how long's it been since you've been to Lutz?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, I've been to Tampa many times but I actually trained in that area with Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Warlord. What ended up happening is, my wrestling journey, it kind of it was a strange way of getting into the business in terms of, I was a fan of wrestling when I was younger, and then it gets tough to kind of watch it as in high school and, getting ready for college and playing baseball and, all that kind of stuff. But I was always a fan and ended up, I went to Northwestern. My college roommate played on the football team. Jeff Shine was on that 95 football team that ended up going to the Rose Bowl that year, 95 into 96. And so I flew out of Tampa. I was actually staying in Sarasota at the time, flew out of Tampa, and ended up, I look over, I'm getting my ticket at the counter, and there's Hulk Hogan. And I literally looked, and my thought was, I'm 6'6", and I was looking at him, and I always, when you're younger and you're watching it on TV, you're seeing Hulk larger than life. I mean, here's this guy that they're listing whatever, 6'9", and, just an enormous human being. Now, granted, he was big, but, this was 95. So it was kind of the slimmed down version of Hulk. I just remember going, he's not as big as I thought he was,
Right.
And didn't say anything to him. Ended up, on the tram next to him. He was behind me in security. Still, none of these things. I didn't talk to him until I was, flying out to LA. So I'm getting a magazine. Again, people don't, this is a different era. Even 95, we didn't have iPads and, all that stuff to pass the time. So I was buying a magazine, and so was Hulk. And so, I introduced myself to him, and I was a minor league baseball player at the time with the Yankees. And I said, I go, we have a mutual friend. And he goes, oh yeah, who's that? And I said, George Steinbrenner. And he goes, the boss? I said, well, I'm with the Yankees in the minor league. So yeah, but I said, I've also known him since I was probably 7 years old, because my dad was a coach with the Yankees, for 10 years. So I said, basically ages 7 to 17 were the ages that my dad was with the Yankees. So we start talking about Steinbrenner and baseball and all this, kind of just standing there at the magazine rack. And then we end up actually on the same flight and out to LA, and he introduces me to Macho Man in LAX at the baggage claim, because we had talked about how Randy was a baseball player, so we, was one of the things that we talked about. So when we get to baggage claim, Hulk says, hey, Randy, this is Dale Torborg. And Macho Man goes, ooh, Torborg, is your dad Jeff? And I was like literally floored, because, I was like, my God, that's his real voice. I'm thinking that was a put on all these years, And so I'm like, kind of snap out of it, dummy. He's talking to you and you're just, kind of stuck in thinking about that being his real voice. So we started talking about baseball, and he said that he was actually a fan of my dad's because he was a catcher. We talked about how his career ended, and he said that, he blew out his throwing shoulder. And this shows you the intensity of Randy, is that he told me he threw 1,500 balls a day left-handed and came back as a left-handed first baseman. I mean, if that doesn't show you intensity, I don't think anything would. I mean, it comes from that family of, Angelo Poffo setting the sit-up record for 6,033 sit-ups in over 4 hours straight or whatever it was. So it shows you that intensity of that family. But that's what really started getting me, thinking about, I could do this because they mentioned, have you ever thought about wrestling? And I never knew anybody in the business. I had no idea how you would get into the business, so I'm thinking, now it actually brought it kind of into the reality realm for me, because it wasn't, you didn't have the grapple cons, you didn't have the wrestle cons, you didn't have, a WrestleCade. You didn't really have any of that back then. So meeting these two kind of larger than life superheroes from your childhood, thinking, wait a minute, this is something that I think I could do, and it was kind of a standing, I don't want to say joke, but it was kind of how we would mess around with each other in the minor leagues. And my buddies would say, man, you should be a pro wrestler, man. You got the size, you're a little off center with your thoughts, and, you're a huge Kiss fan, and, you love all that theatrical stuff. You should be a pro wrestler. So it was kind of what we would joke about. But again, not knowing anybody in the business, you're going, I mean, that's a whole nother world. There's no way I could get into that. But that brought it to reality. Ended up getting hooked up with Terry Warlord and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And I trained in Land O'Lakes, is where we ended up in Neidhart's backyard. So to get to your question a long way to get there, that's how I started training in that Tampa area in Land O'Lakes with those guys. And, that's where I literally got my start.
That's cool. Yeah. So that it's going to mean a lot to be there. Obviously, it's going to bring back old times, probably, I'm sure. So that's very cool. So I want to kind of take a pivot here. Obviously, we're going to take advantage of several different opportunities, being that you, like I said about that whole trifecta thing there. But the first one I want to start with, I feel like is the most important, is what is your earliest memory of your dad playing pro baseball?
Ooh, my memories don't really start with him playing, because I'm the youngest of three.
Okay.
My brothers really, looking back at pictures, they were running around as little kids at Dodger Stadium and in Anaheim when he was a player. Now I was a toddler. I was an infant pretty much. I remember they would say, my mom and dad would say that my mom would bring me down after the games, and my dad would have his chest protector on and everything. And she would hand me over the railing to my dad on the field, and they would say I just was infatuated, like I would grab onto his chest protector. Yeah. So I was really, really young when he was playing. My memories start at Cleveland Stadium when he was the coach and managing with the Indians, is really when my memories really kind of kick in. And then obviously spending his 10 years with the Yankees. 7 to 17 is where, I spent a lot of time with him, and, that was amazing time because I got to be around some of my idols, and Don Mattingly was an idol of mine growing up, and to watch him from, basically have a front row seat to his, early career was incredible. Great human being, it was pretty cool to be able to get to hang out with some of these icons. And then even the Old Timers Day games I wish I had known even more the significance of some of these players, because I was around, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Don Larson, Yogi Berra, Roger Maris. I was around some of the greatest to ever play the game. And, I got to be a bat boy for those games. And I look back at those pictures just going, you got to be kidding me. That I was a kid around all these guys. So, it wasn't lost on me that I had a very special childhood.
Yeah.
All right. So you just talked about your dad coaching the Indians. So you went there in 1977. I know you were still really young, but do you have any memories of hanging out in that old Cleveland Memorial Stadium?
Oh, absolutely. It was a dump. I mean, it really was. Back then, it was just, I remember the field was destroyed after they had a Rolling Stones concert, and it just smelled so bad afterwards because they literally had it at the stadium and people on the field, and it was a mess. But my God, we loved it. I mean, we ran around that place like crazy. I mean, it was they didn't have many fans at the time, and I'll tell you, to kind of swerve this into the music realm, it was actually pretty cool. When the first time I really met Kiss was at UIC Pavilion in Chicago, and it was I think 1992. And Bruce Kulick had set it up. Actually, it was through Sid Fernandez was a big music fan. Sid Fernandez, a pitcher with the Mets, big music fan, and I still have the shirts. Pusshead, who drew Metallica's album covers and their shirts and all that kind of stuff, did special edition Sid Fernandez Pusshead, like rotting zombie Sid Fernandez shirts. I still have those. But Sid was the one who set me up with Bruce Kulick. So I ended up going backstage and meeting the band. And it was interesting because I was talking to Bruce, and somehow the last name came up, and Eric Singer, this was during the Revenge era for Kiss. It was one of my favorite albums of Kiss's, was Revenge, and it was a non-makeup era. But Eric Singer ends up going, "Hey, you said Torborg." He goes, "Are you any relation to the manager?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "I used to watch your dad." He said, "I grew up in Cleveland, and I used to go to those Indians games when your dad was coaching and managing." I'm like, "Oh my God." I go, "Bro, I was real little at the time, but it's kind of crazy to think that I could have bumped into Eric Singer, all those years ago, in old Cleveland Stadium." So I have very fond memories of Cleveland. We lived in North Royalton and Brecksville at the time, and lived down the street from Buddy Bell, and it was a really cool time, and again, how many kids get to grow up in stadiums and get to run around and kind of go nuts.
Yeah, no kidding. Like your own little playground. That's amazing.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so in 89, your dad started coaching for the White Sox. How about old school Comiskey Park? Did you get to hang out there some too, I'm sure?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So when, I was in high school in New Jersey in 89, and he had ended up getting the managing job. He was leaving the Yankees, which was a great time because of, growing up in Jersey and being able to commute to Yankee Stadium was really cool. But now he's headed to, Chicago to be the manager. And I do remember I skipped my junior prom, could care less about going to a prom. I just, we had an opportunity to go to Chicago, and, I'm like, oh, I'm going to Chicago. And so went and hung out, and, it was I think it was a writer's dinner or something like that. So, I was out there for that. And then old Comiskey Park again, it's cool. I got to spend quite a bit of time in different stadiums over the years. Obviously it's, but old Comiskey was again, those stadiums were, in a lot of ways they were, you had big posts right in the middle and blocking the view. You had, the clubhouses were tiny and old, and, kind of like almost sometimes would feel like a dungeon. It was so, it was damp, and it just was, nothing like the clubhouses now. But it was just so damn cool to the history behind these stadiums. I still love Fenway Park is one of my favorites. Fenway was awesome, and Wrigley. Ended up getting to spend quite a bit of time at Wrigley because I was a film major at Northwestern, and A League of Their Own was being filmed in Chicago at Wrigley Field, and ended up being a consultant on that movie and working with all the girls on the baseball scenes. And so I got to spend quite a bit of time at Wrigley Field, and just the history alone of what transpired, and over the years and the historical moments. It just it's cool to be able to see behind the scenes of all these stadiums and clubhouses and that kind of thing. So yeah, I loved all the old school stadiums, but gotta love the perks of all the new stadiums as well.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, it's a different game. Well, I mean, so, in 90 to 94, you played baseball for Northwestern, and tell us, where did you play, and how, do you have any memories of playing college ball?
Yeah, it's great that I still, my college buddies, I still see them. I actually ran into one of my buddies in San Diego at the, in the airport, and, I still stay in touch with all those guys. But yeah, I loved playing at, college baseball, but, I sit there and I think about it sometimes as this, the roughest part of that was playing in that weather. The weather didn't get nice until after our season was over. I mean, we're playing in snow flurries, and the wind coming off that lake was just brutal. And I mean, we used to crack aluminum bats or break aluminum bats because of how cold it was when we were playing. And it was, I sit there and I'm like, what was I thinking? Growing up in Jersey, we didn't have good weather, and going out to Chicago to play baseball, it's not the most conducive weather for baseball.
Yeah.
So that part was, I did not enjoy, but playing in the Big Ten, that was a good time. And, like I said, I still in touch with my college teammates. My college roommate, I ended up playing in the Yankees organization. I got traded over from the Mets to the Yankees, actually in Tampa. And actually at USF was before Legends Field was built. Mm-hmm. We were playing at we were getting changed in the Sun Dome and then playing at the USF field. So I ended up getting traded in the middle of a series, and my college roommate I got traded to the Yankees, and he was on that team. So I got to be with my old roommate, Sloan Smith.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. And so did that tie into the time that you were on the League of Their Own with the college ball? Is that how that?
Yeah, I just finished my freshman year when A League of Their Own was. I was training at the White Sox Stadium when the team was on the road, and I was playing summer ball in Chicago.
Okay.
And I ended up going. I needed to get the key to the weight room. The guy who had the key that ran the stadium was out on the field. And I was asking, where's the key? Oh, he's out on the field with the movie. So again, I was a film major at Northwestern. So I'm like, the movie. So I'm standing there and, waiting to get the key. And I see that I was standing next to a lady that I still am friends with to this day, Carol Chambers. She used to work at Disney. She had left Chicago years ago, and then she was with Disney until she just retired a year or so ago. But I'm standing with Carol, and I see this blonde walk by, and all the girls were playing baseball and on the field, and all that kind of stuff. And I see Tom Hanks is off to the right. He's just doing some baseball type things. And when this blonde walks by, I said to Carol, I go, "Do you know her name?" She goes, I got introduced to her. I don't remember, something different. I go, "Was it Biddy?" She goes, "Yeah, that's it. How did you know that?" And so I go, "Hold on a second." I yelled to her, I go, "Biddy." And she turns around, she's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Biddy, it's Dale Torborg." And she's like, "No way." And I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm in this movie and blah, blah, blah." So Biddy Schramm is the one that is famous for crying. And Tom Hanks said, are you crying? There's no crying in baseball. That's Biddy.
Okay.
So Biddy Schramm went to, she literally grew up 2 minutes from me in New Jersey. Her brother Jamie and I were really good friends when we were young, and she played on my brother's Little League team. And so that's how I got, she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm playing, I'm at Northwestern, I'm playing on the baseball, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, would you be willing to come and help us? We need all the help we can get. We do these training sessions at IIT's field, and IIT's field is literally, a mile away from Comiskey Park.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, can you be there, tomorrow at 9? So I'm like, all right, yeah, 9 a.m. So I'm, show up at 9 a.m. and, they introduced me to some people, and I remember being, introduced to Madonna, and, we didn't really kind of connect. She just said hello the first day, and, the second day the same, third day the same. And, it's just kind of like, hey, what's going on? And then, but I really got, connected with Gina Davis. The first day that she was hitting, she was struggling. And there was a guy that was the baseball consultant on the movie. He was an assistant coach at UCLA. Mm. And he had said, hey, man, do what you need to do. You're not stepping on any of his toes. He's like, I'm outnumbered here. I need all the help I can get. So if you see something, say something, do it. And so I said, okay. And I did something that helped Gina Davis with her hitting, because I'd asked Penny Marshall what she needed. And she said, I need Gina to look like she can hit home runs. I said, got it. And so I was able to help her, and Gina was thrilled. She was getting better, because Gina was added on to the movie late, because it was Deborah Winger originally was going to be the catcher. Uh-huh. And then when Madonna was brought on, she quit. She's like, I'm out. And, there must have been some sort of conflict with them, whatever. Mm. And so Gina was brought in late. So she was trying to, in essence, play catch up. And so I was working with her. She was getting better. Well, Madonna took notice of it. And, she asked me if I would be willing to help her. And I said, I made a mistake. I challenged her, and I wasn't technically trying to. She goes, can you do for me, what you're doing for Gina? And I said, well, yeah, as long as you work at it. And that was the wrong thing to say to her, because my God, she was like Randy, like I was saying, intense. She has an intensity and a work ethic second to none. She wanted to be so good at, and be believable in the movie, that she asked me every day they had an off day. She said, will you pick me up and can we go train on our own? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I would show up, and I remember the first time driving in and it was at like the Four Seasons or whatever. I was calling one of those hotels. And I'm thinking at 7 a.m. I'm just going to be sitting out here waiting. I pulled up in a terrible beat up, piece of garbage car, and out she came. She came walking right out. No security guards, no entourage, no nothing. She got out of the car. Got out of the hotel, into the car, and off we went to Lincoln Park. And I trained with her. I hit her fly balls, ground balls. We hit, we threw, we did everything that we could think of in order to get her to be as believable as possible for that role. And I even remember getting down on the ground and showing her, how to slide head first. And I had to tell her, I said, keep your chest and keep your chin out of the dirt. I said, hit your kind of the palms of your hands, keep your fingers up so you don't jam your fingers. And so I'm showing her, I go, because if your chest and chin hit, you're going to scorpion. I'm like, you keep your face again out of the dirt. And so when you see her slide head first, I had just gotten down on the ground and showed her how to do it. And off she went. She went all out for that role. So I tip my hat to her, give her a ton of credit, because she worked her ass off for that role.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. Huh.
All right. I'm going to ask one more baseball question, then I think we're going to pivot over to your wrestling career. So my last baseball question is, how big was Oscar Gamble's fro?
with Cleveland or with,
Cleveland.
I can only say I just remember the pictures, from his baseball cards. So I do remember those baseball card pictures.
I remember baseball cards too. I just remember, you were, hanging out in Cleveland and didn't know if you actually got to see it live and in person or not.
I don't remember. I don't remember that part of it. I really just remember from the cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had to ask that. It just popped into my head. All right, so we'll pivot towards your wrestling. You talked earlier about you trained with Neidhart and the Warlord. So after your training, did you go to the power plant at WCW before you actually debuted with WCW?
Yeah. So the way that it ended up, so I ended up training with Warlord and Neidhart, like I said, and it was I think it was the 3rd of July of '96 is when I ended up starting to train with them. And I got to tell you, Neidhart beat the crap out of me for 2 days. I mean, he gave me 30 shoulder tackles in a row when I didn't know what I was doing. Was slamming me, and there was no padding. There was no padding on his ring. And I mean, my hip was killing me because I didn't know what I was doing. My feet weren't hitting to disperse any of the energy. So everything was on my hips. And so, it was brutal. I got to tell you, it was brutal. It was that old school mentality of, beat them up and see if they'll come back. Well, I kept coming back, and they're like, okay, the third day, it was like, okay, here we go. And I would make the joke with people. I'm like, listen, I was trained by Warlord and Neidhart, so if I'm stiff in the ring, it's not my fault, because that's the way I was trained. So I didn't mind working snug at all because literally. That's how I was trained by those guys. And Warlord was tremendous. He, great guy. I see him from time to time at these, at signings, and, just a great dude. We went over to India together. Well, to give you an idea, I was only trained for twice a week for 2 months when I had my first real match. And I was taken over. Do you remember the AWF? It was filmed in Tampa.
Yeah.
They did it. Yeah. So I ended up doing a dark match. I had no business being in the ring at this point. I mean, twice a week for 2 months is nothing. I was as green can get. But I ended up, they liked the gimmick. I was doing a baseball gimmick. So it was the MVP gimmick I did. Basically, it was the idea of it was MVP stood for the most violent player. That the backstory was I got kicked out of baseball for being too violent and fighting, blah, blah, blah. And then I broke all of Steinbrenner's rules. So I grew my hair out, had everything that, cut the sleeves off the jersey, all that stuff. And Warlord had said to me, he goes, hey, man, he goes, the reason we did the baseball gimmick is you move like a baseball player. Yeah. You look like a baseball player. He goes, did you ever see the movie The Warriors? I'm like, oh, yeah. I go to Baseball Fury. He goes, let's do something that kind of is based on the Baseball Fury, but make it your own. So I went home, and I remember drawing a blank face on a sheet of paper and making a ton of copies. And I just drew makeup design after makeup design. The interesting thing is, I wasn't watching wrestling to the point at that point when that Abe Knuckleball Schwartz gimmick was going on. I didn't know anything about that. So everything seemed new to me. I did not know about that. Yeah. So again, there was a window there. I didn't watch.
Honestly, I'm just kidding. I was making a bad joke. I'm sorry.
It was Steve. Steve Lombardi, whatever. So I ended up creating something that basically, in my mind, was like Gene Simmons meets the Warriors. So that's what the gimmick looked like. So I do a dark match for the AWF, and the Road Warriors were in it. Cowboy Bob Orton, Coco Beware. It was a lot of the kind of the old school veterans were on this show. And so I get a dark match, and they don't pay me anything, whatever. I go and do it. And that match actually went pretty well. I mean, I only did things that I knew, obviously, that I was even decent at. My big move, and now I hope you're sitting down, was a body slam. I mean, that was my big move, because I, again, 2 months into the business, I didn't know what I was doing, So, but I did the match. It went well. And all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, I'm watching, because they had it on the air in Florida, and I'm watching it. And all of a sudden the show comes on, and here's me coming out. Lord Alfred Hayes is announcing this. And I'm like, wait, what is going on here? So the dark match, they end up putting on and airing it. And the interesting thing, and this is about the business that I learned real fast. And I learned it from Warlord first. He had said, protect yourself. He goes, spend some money, go get your gimmick trademarked.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So I went through, Metallica's managers are really good friends of mine. And I said, how do I go about doing this? And they said, hey, you can use our attorneys. So I went through and I paid a ton of money to get the MVP trademarked, the outfit trademarked, the makeup, everything was done. So I did that. And so I get a call from the AWF, and it was a veteran who's in the Hall of Fame for the WWE now, basically said, here's what we're doing. We aired your match, and this is what we want to do. We want to take your gimmick, get you more experience. We're going to take that, put it on 2 wrestlers with experience. They're going to be a tag team. And I said, no. I said, why don't you, if you want to make it a tag team, have a tag team, one guy and me. So I learned to get the experience. They said, no, we're going to put it on 2 different guys. We're going to put it, and then we'll slide you in when you're ready. And I said, no, I'm like, that's not going to get me any experience. And I was I guess I was somewhat naive at how this would, how the business worked. But again, Warlord smartened me up enough to say, hey, this business is ruthless. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. If you want to do a tag team, again, it's me and one other. I get it. And they're like, well, no, you have no choice. And I go, what do you mean I have no choice? And they're like, we aired your show. We aired your segment. We own your gimmick. I said, no, you don't. Yes, we do. And I go, no, you don't. I said, I have it trademarked, and I can, and I told them the law firm and everything. And I said, I own the whole thing.
Yeah.
Who told you to do that? And I said, it doesn't matter. I said, well, I will tell you, Warlord told me to protect myself. So I got it trademarked. So you do not own it. And the comment to me is like, you don't know what you're doing, kid. You just ended your career. And I said, what, for standing up for myself? And they said, yes. And they hung up on me.
Jeez.
And I was like, all right. So I called Warlord, and I'm like, well, thank you, brother. Yeah, this is, they're not going to use me, but this is what happened. He goes, I knew it. He goes, I knew it. It's like, that's a good gimmick. So the interesting thing is when you kind of look back on the career, so I have the video of me wrestling in the MVP gimmick, but it was a baseball bat. It was a black baseball bat, black and white face paint. And I went over after I did that, I went over to WCW, ended up having, I have my promo picture still there. It was such a weak attempt that I just had Kinko's print out paper copies of the picture of me in the MVP gimmick. And I remember sitting there, and one of the people that kind of was in my corner early on was Medusa. She took me around, introduced me to some people, and said, hey, this is a cool gimmick. So they look at this, and they're like, this is pretty cool. And this is before Sting. This is the black and white face paint. Yeah. The baseball bat. This is all before Sting. So apparently that my picture was floating around, and somehow they kind of said it looks like the Crow and that kind of thing. I don't know exactly what happened, but I do remember sitting there at one point. I went over to India to wrestle, and I wrestled, Bam Bam Bigelow and Bad News Brown and a bunch of people, or Warlord. We were all over in India. I was getting experience. Yeah. And when I came back, I was going to WCW ended up signing me to the power plant. But it was interesting because one of the ideas I had early on was, and again, I had a gimmick I thought was original. Again, I didn't watch during this time. It was called the Widowmaker. And it was like a Gene Simmons-esque character with a Black Widow spider on my face. And I wanted to repel from the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So two of the things that I wanted to do and I pitched to WCW ended up getting done later on, but I had nothing to do with it. Right. So WCW signed me to the power plant, but I knew my MVP gimmick's done because I had been watching TV and Sting shows up in the rafters with black and white face paint, a baseball bat. I'm like, well, no, that gimmick's over with.
Right.
And so I went to the power plant, going, I've got to work on a different gimmick. I ended up using the MVP twice, but we changed the makeup to, black and red and half the face red, half of it black with the makeup design and the stitches and all that kind of stuff. So I did use it twice. I wrestled, Maestro was the first one. And then the second one was Horace Hogan.
Okay.
And I knew the second one I was doing the job on that one because they had already told me, they said, you can either continue doing the MVP gimmick or you can do the Kiss gimmick, and I said, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I'm going to do the Kiss gimmick. And
twist
so we,
yeah.
So that's basically, how the MVP gimmick, I stopped using that one, but I did do it. And I have one really cool thing that I did, the Major Brothers, when I did their live podcast, I brought it on the air. I was, I was doing the thing at TNA, years ago when I did the surprise battle royal.
Right.
And, Matt Cardona and Brian Myers came up and said, hey, do you know that there's a 12-inch MVP action figure? And I go, yeah, I have it. And they go, what do you mean you have it? I said, yeah, I have it. And they're like, no, a friend of ours has it. I said, well, they might have one of them, but I said, I have the hand painted prototype. And they're like, well, wait a minute, you got the hand painted one. And I'm like, yeah, it was a 2-up of it. And they're like, no way. And so there were two made, I guess. And one of them, some collector has, but it's not painted. Mm. And so I ended up bringing the one I have. I have the one and only, hand painted version of the MVP action figure from Toy Biz.
Action figure.
And you don't have to share the offer, the amount, but they made an offer to you, didn't they?
They did not. And they knew that it was, okay. Yeah, they knew that it was not, this is, to me, I'm like, nah, they didn't, great. They're great dudes. I think the world of both of those guys. They're, amazing guys. And so they knew not to, that it was, that thing is not for sale.
Yeah. I mean,
that's definitively not for sale.
They've made tons of 40 and 30-year-old men feel fine buying action figures. You know what I mean? Like, they made it cool to buy action figures, and I've enjoyed their channel. I know my brother, he's not with us today, but he's a huge action figure fan, and he's going to be sad he missed that story there.
You're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Captain's Corner is ready to turn up the heat as winter thaws and we get closer to the spring season. We are excited to welcome the legendary Haku for a public signing in the month of March at the big event in New York. Mail-in is accepted and we'll also have 8x10 photos and cards available. Then on Saturday, April 11th, the spring breakout event of the year takes place at the Residence Inn right outside Tampa. It's Glory Days Grapple Con 4. Featuring Jerry the King Lawler, Dirty Dutch Mantel, The Mountie, Austin Idol, Nikita Koloff, and over 15 additional other stars. This is one event that's sure to thaw you out from the cold. Tickets available now at ticketstreet.com. Make sure to follow us at Captain's Corner Wrestling on Instagram and Facebook. Cheers to the working man.
What a rush. My name is Gary Hart. And when I get out of line, I always go to the chiropractic clinic of Dr. Kevin Witt, right here in Euless. But matter of fact, anyone throughout the mid-cities or the Dallas-Fort Worth area, if you're out of line, Dr. Kevin Witt can get you back in. He's your man.
So let's start talking about Kiss here. So it's early 2000. You start doing the demon gimmick. I mean, how cool
Actually,
is that?
99.
99.
99. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess, how are the guys from the band? Did they like it? Was there any blowback or anything, or was it all planned?
Somewhat of a loaded question. There's a lot to unwrap in this.
Okay.
So I originally did. So I had done a match on Nitro, and I blew my knee out against Kendall Windham. And that's another long story. But I ended up. We were supposed to do a tag match. That's what I was prepared for, and then I did a singles match when we were doing the pit crew thing, and I ended up dislocating my knee, tearing my meniscus, and partially tearing my ACL on one move. So here I am. I'm on the shelf. I was actually supposed to go out to see the Psycho Circus show with a buddy of mine who was with Metal Edge magazine, this guy, Paul Gargano. Yeah. We had tickets to go see the Psycho Circus at Dodger Stadium, thinking, oh my God, Kiss at Dodger Stadium when my dad thought, the Koufax was perfect game. How cool is this going to be? So opening night of Psycho Circus tour. So I blow my knee out. I can't go. Just completely bummed. I'm like, man, I can't go now because I had surgery and whatever. So make a long story short, I end up getting cleared. I get cleared like 6 months after I get cleared. I go to the power plant. I'm kind of just feeling around, like just kind of moving around in the ring just to see how my knee is going to react. So back in the old power plant, there were two that I was at. The old power plant was like a old carpet warehouse. And when the phone would ring in the front for Jody Hamilton, you could hear it all the way through. It was one of those where the phone rings and it's got the speakers and you could hear it ring all the way through the building. So every time the phone rang, you would hear the ringer all the way through this old carpet factory warehouse or whatever. And that's where the old power plant, dirty, dingy, but it was a cool place to train. So, and they had a loudspeaker, and Jody Hamilton, we don't think much of it because, back then it was the power plant commercials for the tryouts were on all the time. So you got people wondering when the tryouts. So we don't think much about it. So the phone rings, whatever, we continue doing our thing. Well, Jody Hamilton is running it, and he goes on the speaker. He goes, Dale, if you're back there, please come to the front. And I'm thinking, oh man. All right. Because in baseball, when you're on the shelf from an injury, they don't release you until you're healthy. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm done. I'm getting released now. So I go in and Jody says, have a seat. I'm like, oh, here it is. Get the axe. And he goes, that was Bischoff. I go, okay, now even more, your stomach drops thinking, oh, all right. Just say it. He goes, he wants to see you in his office. And I'm thinking, why does he want to see me in his office? I mean, he's not going to do it himself, cut me himself.
Right.
And I said, is this good or bad? And he goes, no, it's good. Oh, good. Okay, cool. Thinking Jody was a great man.
Yeah.
And so he's like, but get your stuff, go down there now. He's waiting for you. I said, okay. So I head down there, and Janie Angle was his assistant. She's like, hold on. And so she goes, okay, here, go ahead and go in. So I go in, and, Eric is like, how you doing? I said, yeah, doing well. Thanks. And he goes, listen, I heard you're a big Kiss fan. I said, yeah. I said, I've been a Kiss fan since the age of 5. I said, they're my favorite band. He goes, that's what I heard. And so he goes, you obviously know who Gene Simmons is. I go, yeah. I go, one of my idols. I did a speech on my 3 people I admire most, and one was my dad. The other was Don Mattingly. The other one was Gene Simmons. And he goes, all right, well, he goes, this is kind of kayfabe, but we're going to be doing a gimmick that's based on Gene Simmons' alter ego. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, of course I am. And he goes, okay, well, here's the deal. This is on a Friday. This is on a Friday morning. And he said, okay, here's the deal. We have a pay-per-view on Sunday in St. Louis. You're going to fly out tomorrow on Saturday. We're going to get you there. You're going to have a dark match as a tryout match for the character. And I said, all right. And he goes, I heard you just got cleared recently, right? And I go, yeah, an hour ago. And he goes, wait a minute. He goes, you just got cleared an hour ago. I said, yeah, just as soon as I was cleared, I went to the power plant. He goes, all right, well, do you want to do the tryout match? And I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking, oh my God, I haven't done anything in 6 months. And he goes, here's the deal. He goes, do you have someone you'd want to work? And I said, I do. And I said, Johnny Swinger. And he goes, well, go see if Johnny can get there. You guys do something. And he goes, listen, I know that you just got cleared, but he goes, if you want this, you better show me something special. I'm like, yes, sir. Went out and I'm going, oh my God. Janie's like, so get in touch with Johnny. And I go, can I call him here? And so we called him right from there. And I said, hey, can you meet me down at the power plant? Do you want to have a match with me on Sunday? He goes, hell yeah. He goes, I'll be right there. So we didn't even, my knee, I didn't know was going to hold up or not. So Swinger and I end up just talking through a 10-minute match. I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get through a 10-minute match? I haven't done anything. In the ring. I mean, you talk about ring rust, and especially for someone who's green, this isn't a good combination.
Right.
So we go through it and we fly to, we end up flying to St. Louis, and that's actually where I met my wife for the first time. She was at the Avis rental counter in the St. Louis airport. And I asked her if there was nobody at the counter. I said, do you need a ride? Are you all right? And she's like, oh yeah, well, I'm fine. They're just going to get my keys. And I'm like, okay. And I introduced myself and Johnny. And I remember walking out going, I don't know what I expected. She was a bodybuilder and she was pretty jacked. I'm like, I didn't know what I was expecting, but I said to Johnny, I go, she was really cool. Little did I know that, we would be married for over 25 years now and from a meeting in the St. Louis Avis. But that's awesome. That's what I ended up doing. And the way that we did set up the match too is I told Johnny, I said, listen, let's lock up. Let's push off. I'm going to drop kick you right from the get go. I said, because if my knee is going to go, I have a feeling it's going to go. The kneecap's going to leave town on a drop kick. And he goes, okay. I said, let's not waste anybody's time. If my knee goes, then we're done. And so he goes, okay. So that's what we did. We locked up. I drop kicked him, landed it. Everything was fine. We had a really good match for 10 minutes. And I walked there was something even before that, which kind of, I was never as nervous before or since for anything because I wanted that character so bad. You can imagine being a Kiss fan my entire life, basing other characters off of Gene Simmons. That was the one thing I wanted more than anything. So you talk about the nerves, man, I was as nervous as I've ever been. Yeah. But I'm getting ready to go out. And plus I hadn't done anything and like everything was stacked against me not to get the gimmick. But as I'm walking it out, I'm wearing a Psycho Circus clown, glow in the dark clown shirt is what I'm wrestling in. Black leather pants and this Psycho Circus. They didn't want the makeup. They didn't, so I'm getting ready to walk out and Bischoff grabs me before I go through the curtain, grabs mine and goes, hey, I want you to do Gene without doing Gene. And then pushes me out. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I'm literally, I'm walking out there going, what the hell is he talking about? And then I just was going, you know what? I can't worry about this. I'm not going to stick out my tongue. I'm just going to do the essence of how I think the character would move. Because I knew how Gene Simmons was because again, he was an idol of mine all those years. Yeah. So I knew what I had to do. And afterwards I'm just like, off I go. And so we did the match. Everything goes great. I walk through the curtain and I'm pretty pumped up. Bischoff's sitting there and he goes, I said, how was that? And he goes, straight faced. He goes, you got another job you can go to? And I go, I said, I guess I'm going to have to, now I went from being at a high to what? Yeah. And he busts out laughing. He's like, no, man. He goes, you got it. That was great. You got it. And, straight, like release of like, oh, thank God, ended up calling home, calling back to Atlanta, saying, I got it. I was super pumped, so excited. Now got the, they're like, you're going to do another match tomorrow in Cape Girardeau. They wanted me to work. I ended up wrestling Ming, who is one of the greatest people on the planet, and thank God he is. The scariest human being ever and the nicest at the same time. But, I ended up wrestling him in Cape Girardeau, and then Bischoff had told me, he said, I want to see you in my office, Wednesday or Thursday to get everything finalized. I'm like, great. Said, Janie will be in touch with you. So Wednesday rolls around, nothing. Thursday rolls around, nothing. They end up flying Glacier and me out to the opening of the Nitro Grill in Las Vegas. And there was a bunch of other wrestlers too, but I remember flying out with Glacier. And I see Eric there, and I sitting down, and I said to him, I said, you still want to see me in your office? And he looks up at me and goes, no. And that was it. And I went, what just happened? Like I had it, tells me I had it, come to the office, we're going to sign the paperwork, get this done. And I'm like, I just kind of walked away from the table, like just stunned, like, what the, I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah.
So they end up, Brian Adams, they end up picking Brian. I find out everything later. So what ended up happening is that they showed, there were 3 of us that did the test makeup, Chris Canyon, Brian Adams, and myself. So they showed, the only time I didn't do my own makeup was Andre Freitas from AFX Studios in Atlanta did the first makeup job on me. And so they took pictures and they took it to Gene and said, out of these 3, who would you pick? And Gene picked me. He goes, this guy looks the most like me. And they said, okay. And he goes, so Gene had been watching the WWE, watching, he does his homework. He's a smart dude. He does his homework. And he said, I love what they're doing with Kane. He goes, who's the biggest of those 3? And I'm like, well, Brian Adams is 300 pounds. And he goes, well, then pick him. So Gene wanted a Kane kind of esque character at that point.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up not getting it. But then, so I went out to Vegas. I tried to help Brian Adams. Brian was like, I don't know what I'm doing. He goes, I'm not a fan of the band. I don't know. And so I tried to teach him some of the mannerisms and trying to help him, guide him. I was out at that show when Kiss debuted because people still give me grief. I was like, oh, Kiss had the lowest rated and it's, that gimmick sucked because of you. I'm like, I wasn't even the guy at that point. Like, you can't put that on me. I wasn't even him at that point. And so, what ends up happening is Brian does that one. He does one more at Nassau Coliseum. He never wrestled in the gimmick. He only did those 2 appearances where he challenged Vampiro, was the Nassau Coliseum one.
Right.
And then, so Brian called me and he goes, hey man, here's the deal. He goes, I just bowed out of character. And he goes, I called WCW and told them this ain't for me, because there was a whole bunch of stuff in the behind the scenes. And trust me, I am getting to your question eventually. As you can tell, I take, long routes to get there.
Take your time.
But they ended up, he goes, there was an issue with merchandising and the percentages. So Brian wasn't going to get percentages for doing the gimmick. And he's like, I don't know this gimmick. I don't get it. And I'm not getting merch. Like I'm out. And he goes, so I told WCW that you made a mistake. Dale should have gotten it from the beginning. Huge Kiss fan, huge Gene Simmons fan. He gets it. He should have gotten it to begin with. And he goes, they're going to be calling you. I guarantee it. I said, all right, man, I appreciate it. And, Brian Adams, one of the most amazing souls, with just a great, great human being. It says, just a terrible loss that he's no longer around because he was just a great guy. I will always appreciate the time I spent with him. Yeah. But so they in WCW, JJ Dillon calls me and said, hey, listen, Brian Adams is not going to do it. I said, I know, I just talked to Brian. He goes, are you up for it? And he goes, it's contractually, we have to do it. It's a contractual deal. Are you interested? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Because I know we're doing the MVP stuff, but are you, it's either one or the other. It's your choice. And I said, I want to do the Kiss gimmick. He goes, now we're going to push you. We can push you, as the MVP, but, I said, no, I want to do the Kiss gimmick.
Yeah.
So I end up taking the gimmick. I don't get the merchandising either, because it was that's part of the reason why the gimmick didn't get over. They didn't push the gimmick because it was very lopsided towards Kiss for the merchandising gimmick. But the sad part about this, there's a sad part of how this could have been saved. Is you asked me about how the band, I told you I'd get back to the question. You asked me about how the band was.
Yeah.
So they did not like it that they were beating me, that the WCW was beating the character. I said, here's the deal. I said, it's all because of this merchandising deal. And I'm standing talking with Gene and Paul. They're in full makeup, full costumes before one of the shows in Tampa.
Yeah.
And Gene goes, listen, he goes, I will change the entire deal so you'll get the merch, you'll do all that. He goes, let them know that I will change the deal. To his credit, Gene was going to change the deal.
Whoa.
So when Gene ends up trying to, he said that he would do it. And I tell WCW's merchandising people, and I said, listen, he's willing to change the deal. They never called him. They were afraid of getting sued. They were afraid of Gene's attorneys. And I said, listen, he's willing to change the whole deal for this to get over. They want it to work. They're willing to change everything in the deal. They never called him. So that happened. And I had another time where Gene, I came up with an idea, was for New Blood Rising. And I knew that I was going to take a beating in this one. We knew it was going to be with Sting. And I said, and it was the whole Fire, Vampiro, and that whole deal.
Yeah.
So I called Gene and I said, hey, I've got an idea. Would you be willing to make an appearance on our show? And he goes, what are you thinking? And I said, kind of as you being a father figure to the demon, the character.
Yeah.
And he goes, all right, tell me more. Because I was supposed to light, Vampiro wanted me to light Sting on fire. It was that whole gimmick. So I said, I want you to, come out, and this is what I would want you to do, is to kind of give me a tongue lashing, and like, I didn't raise you like that. You pick him up. You do not do that, that, and go ultimate babyface with Sting. Because they wanted to change me babyface back from being with Vampiro. They wanted to do that. And I was like, the way they had it written was that, Sting comes out and then beats me, and then he beats me quick and knocks me out of Vampiro's spell, which ended up happening. But again, there was a cluster that happened there too. But I ended up saying to them, I'm like, listen, Gene Simmons is willing to do this. He's willing to fly, because it was in Vancouver. He's willing to fly and do this. Again, they never called him, and they went with the knocking me out quickly. But what was supposed to happen was, in that New Blood Rising match, if you ever go back and watch that, my entrance goes, I get in the ring, and what's going to happen is Sting's music is supposed to play, Seek and Destroy is supposed to play one loop, and he doesn't come. And so I'm going to do a sneak attack. I'm going to go up and wait for him as he comes through the entrance. But as soon as I get up on the ramp, he repels behind me. And that's what it was supposed to happen. So he's supposed to repel behind me on the ramp, and then, taps me on the shoulder, and then, we fight all the way down the ramp. And then, he throws me in, boom, 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 knocks me out of Vampiro's spell. And then the next night on Nitro, I'm a babyface.
Duh.
Well, what happens is I'm standing in the ring, and I think it was Mickey J was our ref, and Sting's music plays. So, dun, 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 Seek and Destroy, and the rope drops. immediately. So the rope drops right in the ramp.
Mm.
And I look at Mickey J and I'm like, am I not supposed to see that? And I'm sitting there going, what now? What do I do now? So now Sting starts repelling. So I jump out of the ring, and before Sting can even get out of his harness, I start attacking him. He goes, what are you doing? I go, gotta go. And so we boom, 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 go through, throws me in the ring, gives me the splash in the corner. I feed back out. He gives me the death drop, 1, 2, 3. It was like a minute long. And I got, killed on the internet for, how bad I suck and all that kind of stuff, just because of, certain things. I'm like literally going, do you realize that it's supposed to be a lot longer, a whole nother, the song was supposed to play again. But it was like, I had to think on my feet, because I'm like, everyone sees the rope. What am I going to go down there and walk around the rope? Like, I don't see this. So, there's times I probably look stupid, but it's like that. I would have really looked stupid doing that.
Yeah. You made the right call for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about the Dark Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Is there just the origins of it, and why did it last long, and or was it just WCW dropping the ball? Because it sounds like they dropped the ball on everything on this gimmick.
Well, for one, I mean, let's be real here. The timing probably couldn't have been worse for that type of gimmick. They were going more reality based. I mean, the Undertaker now went to the American Badass, and it's like they were. Yes, we had Sting, but Diamond Dallas Page and Hall and Nash. It was all more and more reality based stuff. So the timing really wasn't good for any of this. And then the creative wasn't real creative. It was like, oh, you have face paint and you have face paint. Oh, and you have face paint. You guys are together. So, I mean, it was an honor. I mean, obviously to be in the group with Muta and Vampiro. I loved wrestling Vampiro. We were stiff together, and I told him early on, I'm like, I don't care how hard you hit me. I have no problem. You hit me as hard as you want. It's fine. And he's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I want it to look real. And so he was the same way. He never complained. He was awesome to work with. Never say a bad word about Vampiro ever. Just a great guy, great to work with. And then, being with, Muta, my gosh, is an icon. So it was cool. We had, it was fun doing that. I think the Dark Carnival thing came from I don't know who came up with it, but it was like you had Psycho Circus, and Dark Carnival. It just kind of, I guess, I don't know who came up with it. And the funny thing is, one thing behind the scenes is they called my finishing move the Love Gun. That's not what it was supposed to be called at all. It was supposed to be called Destroyer. It was Mark Madden. He forgot what I had said, and he called it the Love Gun. And
this one's called Cold Gin. It's like, pick the worst name.
I had one of the two. Yeah, but one of the two was either Destroyer, or I wanted it to be called the Kiss of Death.
Yeah.
And so, so I had those two, and then it ended up being a Love Gun. And I never liked that as the name. Love the album, that I didn't like it as the name of the finishing move.
Right. So I read that the Demon character was originally supposed to be the beginning of a stable called the Warriors of Kiss, in which other original members of the band would have a wrestler representing their look and gimmick. I guess, did you all get very far with that? Was there any other guys picked out? Did you have hey, maybe we can use Bryan Adams now, or maybe, Brian Clark, or maybe Raven or somebody. Did you have any guys that were picked out that could have been in that?
Well, yeah. I had, when WCW was on its last legs, and we didn't know that it was really that close to being done, but they wanted me to try to find somebody that they didn't want known guys. Yeah. They wanted more of, people they hadn't seen. So we were looking for the Star Child Paul Stanley character at the time. I had one guy penciled in to do the Catman, the Peter Criss
Really
character.
I'm just kidding.
No, it was a guy, Sean Evans. He went by Sean Shocker. He grew up with Kurt Angle, and unfortunately died of cancer. I think it was cancer at a very young age. But he was a guy that I thought would be a good Catman character, because he was a fan of the band, and but again, that it just never materialized. And I was actually supposed to be the Girls a Kiss they were supposed to have too. So there was going to be a female faction as well. But
that would have been a pretty big faction.
Yeah. Just again, it's just
the Girls
the
a Kiss.
timing.
Sorry.
I don't know if it would really have ever worked at that time. I think it would work more now.
Sure.
Than then. It was just a time when, with more reality based, and that it was an interesting deal, because I was kind of a lightning rod of hate at one point, because the wrestling fans didn't like it that Kiss was marketing into their into their world, and so you had a lot of the diehard wrestling fans didn't like the Kiss gimmick, and said it was the worst ever or whatever. And then you had the Kiss fans didn't like it that WCW was beating the character, so there was hate at that end. But then I just did a signing in North Carolina at Mad Monster, and I have people come up to me all the time, to this day, and saying, you were the only reason I was watching WCW. We couldn't wait for you to come out, and we loved it. So you had it, like I said, I was a lightning rod of hate for one point, but, I think as people kind of got the idea, it's like, hey, listen, wrestling is entertainment. Mm-hmm. It's on every week, 52 weeks a year, multiple times. You've got to come up with creative things. The fans seem to be always asking for creative new things. And then when you give it to them, they're pissed because it's not what they wanted. And, it's like, you can't always win, you really can't always win with this stuff. So, it's like I was watching, Danhausen coming out, and, that he's first and foremost, great dude.
Yeah.
I met him a few times. Really, really good guy.
Hilarious.
Entertaining.
Yeah.
And it's just like, my gosh, it's just because it wasn't what you expected or wanted at that point, and everyone's talking about it. So right. I hope he has a great career, a great time in the WWE. That's what I love to see, is that is it's a fun gimmick. He's funny. He's entertaining. It's not your typical come out there and try to be, Billy Badass and, come out as a tough guy. You've got plenty of those guys. He's, to me, perfect for what they need right now. So I'm hoping that he has a great career there, because it's great to see that,
Yeah. I mean, I think I could see like a series of movies from him, like a Pee Wee Herman kind of thing. Not, maybe cross Pee Wee Herman and Svengoolie up or something. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of elements there with Danhausen that are not limited by wrestling. Let's just say that. I very entertaining guy.
Let's just hope they do the right thing, keep on creating, creative angles for him, and because entertaining as can be, man. He is, it's a breath of fresh air seeing something like that. So I'm with you. I mean, it's like that Svengoolie and Elvira, that whole stick, man. It's awesome. I think it's great. I hope it really succeeds. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. So, we could go on and on about Kiss and wrestling, but to kind of wrap it back around, I really yesterday when we were talking about you coming on the show through text, you were like, "Hey man, you want to check this out?" And you sent me the link to your documentary that you did for your dad. So I guess I'd like to talk some about that. Talk to us about Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life documentary. You know, it was really cool. So I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan, and what was really cool, three things I want to say here real quick. First of all, it was really cool to see Buddy Bell. Love Buddy Bell as a Red. You know, I know he's a great Indian, but it was really fun having him as a Red during the Cleveland portion. Then, of course, seeing Ryan Dempster during the Marlins portion was really cool. Another thing, I got to ask a quick question. So the Reds swept the A's in the 90 World Series. I almost think that if the Sox would have made it, it would have gone to 7 with the Reds because they were two very similar teams. But anyway, that can be an off-topic discussion, but I would love to hear about your dad's documentary.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you watching it. Just that, you know, I thought it's good that if you watched it before this, because it, you know, it explains a lot about who I am, and you know, part of the whole thing has the wrestling clips in there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and for the Reds thing that you were talking about in 1990, you know, it could have been a whole, like you said, a whole different deal, because there was not a wild card at that point.
Right.
Had the third best record in all of baseball and didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Crazy.
shows you about, you know, being behind those Oakland A's. And, you know, in 1990, those White Sox teams, you know, worked over the A's and, you know, swept that whole West Coast trip, the A's and Angels at that point. So, you know, I'm with you. I think it would have been much more interesting World Series if the White Sox had been in there. I don't know who would have won, but, you know,
right.
would have liked to have thought it would have been there. Yeah. So the documentary, and again, I really appreciate you watching it. It's A Wonderful Baseball Life, Jeff Torborg documentary on YouTube. So anybody that wants to go in, I don't know if you could put a link somewhere or whatever, or just
in the description.
Yeah, but yeah, please. And it's on YouTube, so anybody can watch it. But gotten so many positive comments and reviews, and you know, a bunch of celebrities have reached out to me. I got one of the greatest messages. I got a 3-minute long message from Sting. He watched the entire documentary, and I'm not going to get into what he said because it's, you know, I still saved the message because it was absolutely incredible. And got text messages. Jeff Jarrett watched it and was commenting on it, and just, you know, people that you respect that, you know, reach out and say, my God, what an amazing documentary. But it was, you know, about how, you know, we wanted as a family, the way that the documentary came about is that we had the Celebration of Life. He passed away a little over a year ago, and the Celebration of Life was in June of last year. And so I ended up reaching out to a guy that Matt Flesh, the director, directed the last Comiskey documentary about the last season at Comiskey Park. Okay. So we had gotten to be friends, you know, after I'd watched his documentary about the last Comiskey. And then when my dad passed and I was talking, I said, hey man, I go, you have any interest in doing a documentary with me? And granted, you know, about an hour ago, I had told you that I was a film major at Northwestern. That ended up being, I said, I want to produce a documentary about my dad for the Celebration of Life.
Yeah.
And I said, it could be a short documentary. So he ends up, you know, the two of us put some things together, and it ends up being great. It's like it's an hour long. You know, that version of it was an hour long for the Celebration of Life, and people absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But then when it was over, I said to him, I said, hey, what if we change this up? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, what if we change this up? And, you know, I said, I have way more footage. And so I went in my parents' archives, and I converted over 36 hours of VHS to digital.
Wow.
And so I bought a little converter on Amazon, and I converted all these VHS over to digital. Then I scanned over 3,500 pictures, from slides to, you know, my parents had a scrapbook from when they went over to Japan.
Yeah.
So I scanned all that. And so I found Western Union telegrams from Diane and Cary Grant. I mean, my God, Cary Grant. I'm finding letters from Frank Robinson, and they're in the documentary. You'll see the letter from Frank Robinson. You see a letter from Nolan Ryan. There's just so much cool stuff. And so when I was doing this, I'm like, hey, check this out. So I kept sending stuff to Matt. I'm like, here's a video. Check this one. And so found stuff with Don Drysdale and this. And so ended up, we created I got to give Matt the credit on making a tremendous documentary. He put all the stuff that I found. He found a clip of my mom walking into when she was a contestant in the Miss America pageant. He found somebody's home movie somewhere of my mom walking into the Miss America pageant. So it was something that we wanted as a family. But as I was trying to put this thing together, going, my dad was looked at and said, it's like how some people only know me either from the baseball world or from wrestling, and you have your preconceived notions about who I am. People must see me a certain way and, oh, he's that guy. And that's it.
Right.
People saw my dad either as a player, coach, manager, broadcaster, whatever. They might have seen him from afar and might have loved him as a manager, loved him as a player, hated him as a manager, or didn't like him as a broadcast, whatever it is. But when you watch the documentary, you see the person.
Right.
And that's what I wanted and we wanted as a family. You got to know him through other people, how he treated others. And when you see, the Buddy Bell segment, Buddy has one of my favorite quotes in it. There's a few quotes in the documentary that I absolutely love. One was Jeff Schaefer. Jeff Schaefer says, we define ourselves as baseball players, but what basically is what we're defined by our character. And Jeff Torborg just oozed of character. Love that quote. And Buddy Bell said, Jeff was the perfect combination of kindness and toughness, because my dad was the nicest person to everybody. But there was one of those old sayings is, don't mistake his kindness for weakness, because this was one of the toughest human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
And so when, it was, and you saw how he treated through all those interviews, you saw how he treated people. But what was cool too is in 2010, I had sat down with a video camera and I said, Dad, nobody tells your stories like you do. And for our family, for the grandkids and the great grandkids to hear your stories coming from your mouth, let's sit down. And I said, I'm going to film you telling stories. So he did a yellow legal pad of just one line per story. And we sat for 3 days, about 10 hours worth of footage. And that's how, when you see him talking to the camera, that came from 2010 before he had gotten Parkinson's. And he basically narrates his own documentary with obviously the commentary from Ron Guidry and, all the Snake Sable, one of my really good buddies from Skid Row, all these different people that, Claire Smith, the Hall of Fame reporter, writer, you name it. I can't even think, from Lee Stevens to, like I said, Jeff Schaefer, Scott Fletcher, Jack McDowell, you name it. There's just so many people on this documentary that told Dad's story and how he treated them. And that's what we wanted. So, if you get a chance, go check out Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life on YouTube. It's, it's just a great documentary. I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. You did an incredible job. You did your dad proud. It was an easy watch too. And what I say by that is, like, it just draws you in, and then you just like, holy cow, I just watched the entire thing. Wow. Like, I didn't even get up to get a snack. I was like, holy cow, this was, I really can't express it enough, man. You did an incredible job. You such as a podcaster and a content creator, I'm a dork for that stuff, like just the editing and the back end stuff that I know you went through to do all that. And I was just so impressed, and I was like, man, he did a really good job there, just as an editor. You know what I'm saying? And I was just I was really impressed by that. And I highly recommend. Like I said, the link for the video and the documentary is going to be in the notes below. So go ahead and click on that once you're done listening to Dale today here. So
I'm super proud of it, and then again, my brother came up with the title. We were trying to come up with something, and his favorite movie is A Wonderful Life, and he goes, "What do you think about calling it A Wonderful Baseball Life?" And I went, "Whoa, wait a minute." I said, one of my really good buddies is the guitar player and one of the founding members of Creed and Alter Bridge. So Mark Tremonti,
dude,
so he and I are really good buddies. What a great dude. Those guys in the band are incredible. Most down to earth dudes. And I called him. I said, "Hey bro," I said, "you have that song, A Wonderful Life." And I said, "Can we use that?" And he saw the documentary. He's like, "You absolutely, brother." And so that's Alter Bridge's A Wonderful Life plays at the very end. And it just, to me, kind of encapsulates the entire, it just wraps it up so nice. And so it's just like, it was just super cool to have, different parts of my life. We talked about it in the beginning of the trifecta of wrestling, music, and baseball. And it's all in that documentary. So,
perfectly said. Perfectly said.
Yeah.
One more time, we can't thank you enough for coming on, Dale. This has been incredible. Of course, we got to say it. GrappleCon 4, back to Lutz, April 11th at the Residence Inn, Tampa Suncoast Parkway. First off, thank you so much for coming on, telling your story, telling your dad's story. Thank you for making that documentary. Thank you for being the demon. Thank you for playing baseball. Thank you for just being you, man. And honestly, we can't thank you enough for telling your story, brother. So thank you. Have a great time in Lutz and tear it up and make a ton of money, bud.
Well, I appreciate it. We haven't touched on something that, different things that are important to me is that I'm working on a brand new project. And if it's balanced shoes for people that have balance and stability issues.
Wow.
So we talked about, Mark Tremonti. Mark Tremonti's daughter has Down syndrome. So we are going to be going for the Down syndrome community, MS, autism, but just in general, these balance shoes for people that are struggling, that have, falls are such a big problem. Especially we live in Florida, and the people as they age are falling.
Yes. Yeah.
So a buddy of mine that I've known for 30 some years is one of the co-creators of this shoe. It's called Pahi, Pahi. And if you go to pahiusa.com, you can see the shoes. We should be live in the next 2 weeks, but you can actually see the shoes. But this is going to be another project that is going to help so many people. And I'm in that phase of life now to give back and to help as many people as I can. And so this, Pahi, PAHIUSA.com is going to do that. And they're based out of Tampa. So that's another Tampa connection. So just wanted you guys to be aware of that. That's going to be the next big project on my docket. So, I'm looking forward to helping as many people out as possible. And then I'll tell you some of the people we've gotten shoes to so far, and if I get a chance to see you at GrappleCon.
That sounds awesome, brother. So let's just check the boxes here: baseball, rock and roll, wrestling, and now shoes and movies too. So you're the 5-tool player right there, brother. That is awesome. Good job, man. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I can't thank you guys enough. It's been a pleasure.
All right, sir. Take care. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you soon, bud. Take care.
Sounds good. You got it.
All right, y'all. That was the one and only Demon Dale Torborg. We'll be right back to wrap things up on Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling after these messages.
CHW is continuing the legacy of historic professional wrestling in Tennessee with monthly events at the Armory in Ashland City. CHW owner Mike Green has made it his mission to present the best pro wrestling shows in the Nashville area, and he has been delivering the goods. CHW Wrestling combines all the elements that Tennessee wrestling fans have come to expect. Action, suspense, athleticism, reality, stories, surprises, and excitement, all delivered by the finest professional wrestlers this state has to offer. Follow CHW Pro Wrestling on Facebook for the latest news, announcements, and show dates. And subscribe to Championship Productions on YouTube to see past events like the Ashland City Rumble and the Valentine's Massacre. Fun for the whole family with delicious and affordable concessions on site. Witness the action and excitement of CHW in Ashland City at the Armory. Family Wars, Love and Hate, Championship Gold. A CHW event is everything you're looking for in a night of live entertainment.
All right, we are back with more of the Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling guys, and once again, gotta thank our buddy Dale Torborg, aka the Kiss Demon, aka the MVP, for dropping by and telling his story. What a really cool conversation that was, and honestly, we could have kept going. I mean, honestly, we could be here still talking to Dale. No problem. Such a great talker, such a great conversationalist. Learned a lot today. He worked on A League of Their Own. Of course, all the baseball stuff. Talking about the deal about Gene Simmons picking him over Brian, and then Brian because he liked Kane. Oh, man, it was so cool. We learned a lot today. I hope y'all enjoyed it nearly as much as we did. Great, great show. Once again, Dale's going to be at GrappleCon 4, back to Lutz, April 11th at the Residence Inn, Tampa Suncoast Parkway. Don't miss that. You'll have a great time, we promise. So thank you again, Dale. Great show, man. All right, guys, to kind of continue on, if you don't mind, our good buddy Ben Jordan, he just retired from his job. Hopefully he's going to get a lot of time to kick back and enjoy life and spend time with his family. We'd like to say, Ben, congratulations on a great career. You deserve all the relaxing you can get now. If you guys don't mind, just keep Ben in your continued prayers. He's still fighting the good fight, and we've got all the faith in the world that it's going to be all good. So, like I said, keep our buddy, Wild Boy Ben Jordan, in your prayers, though. Thank y'all. All right, y'all. Next episode, of course, is going to be our This Month in Wrestling History with Quinton Quarisma, episode 9, covering March. Can't wait to hear what Quinton's got in store for us, as always. Y'all tune in for that next week. If you'd like to find out more about what's going on with us, of course, you can find out all the news that is the news over on @GMBMPW on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X. All of our new Facebook followers, hope y'all are enjoying what we're doing, and thank y'all for stopping by and checking us out. Keep it up. Keep it up. All right, y'all, that's all I got for today. So for the Demon Dale Torborg, the Territory Wrestling Guru Quinton Quarisma, and myself, this has been Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling. We'll see y'all next time.
Don't forget,
this is all his fault. It's his fault that you got attacked by Vampiro. I went away for 2 months to therapy. I thought he was gone, but he came back again. I don't know what I'm going to do, but until then, we can't have a normal life together. And you know I will do anything I can to make it normal for us and put him away for good.
Edie, I don't blame you. I blame him.
Well, you got to do me a favor. You got to take this, put it somewhere where I can't find it. Just get rid of it.
All right, I'll do whatever I can to get rid of him.
Who's he talking about? Him? The demon? And there's Vampiro. going through his mind. Vampiro is in the ring.
You know, last week I came across somebody who I thought had a lot of potential. The Demon. I thought that this was somebody I could have something in common with. Rock and roll, makeup, fire, and of course, mayhem. But now I hear he's going away. So you know we got to do this right. Let's have a little party. Right now I'd like to call out the two people who are closest to him in all the world. Dale the Demon Torborg and his beautiful, lovely, charismatic force of nature fiancée, Asia. Will the beautiful couple please come out?
Sounds like Vampiro's figured it out. Dale Torborg wants to dump the Demon, ditch that alter ego, get rid of the split personality thing.
He's already put Sting out of the sport after what went down at the Great American Bash. Now he's cost the sport the Demon.
Hey, Benzer, cut that music.
It's God of Thunder.
Don't you get it? That ain't the Demon. That's Dale Torborg. That's the guy behind the makeup. He's trying to say goodbye to the Demon. The least we can do is be cordial and respect his wishes.
What is this nut trying to
Dale,
prove?
it must be really tough to let go of something that's such a part of yourself. You know, Dale, doesn't it make you feel empty when a part of you just goes away?
Holy smokes! Oh, the lights cut out.
Good night. What? Where's Asia?
Well, what happened here? It looks to me, Dale, like just more than your Demon has vanished.
She has vanished. In thin air. And the lights out again.
What is going on?
Now where's
Vampiro?
He's disappeared as well.
This is unbelievable. When the going gets tough, the weird turn pro, and Vampiro's even too weird for me at this point.
Asia's gone, Vampiro's gone, Dale Torborg.
I guess when you're together as you are, my friend, all you really need is yourself, right?
And now he's outside. He's outside driving off and looked like a hearse.
Was Asia in that car? I didn't see her, but where the heck is she?
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life.
We'll see you next week. And until then, so long for now.
This has been a James Rock Street production.